It was still dark when flames broke through the thin metal roof of a mobile home on Flaxman Street, just outside Pensacola. At 2:45 a.m. on November 7, 2025, police calls poured in from neighbors screaming that a trailer was on fire at the Grand Oak Mobile Home Park. Within minutes, firefighters arrived to find the home engulfed in orange light. Inside, through the smoke, were two small silhouettes that never moved. The bodies of two children, 9-year-old Vaden Oram and 7-year-old Raiden Smith, were found huddled together in a back bedroom. Their dog lay nearby, also lifeless. At first glance, responders thought the fire had trapped the children inside. But within hours, investigators began realizing something darker had happened. Detectives from the Escambia County Sheriff's Office noticed that the burn pattern didn't match a typical accidental blaze. There were clear signs of accelerant on the floor, and evidence that someone had started multiple points of ignition: the hall, the kitchen, and near the children's room. The discovery led to a devastating conclusion. The fire had been intentionally set after the children were already dead. Later that morning, the state fire marshal and the Florida Bureau of Fire, Arson, and Explosives joined the scene. Crime scene technicians began documenting every detail. Beneath the charred debris, forensic examiners recovered physical evidence suggesting one of the children had been sexually assaulted before death. The realization turned a tragedy into a homicide investigation that shocked even veteran officers. Outside the smoldering ruins, neighbors stood in disbelief. Many had seen the children playing in the yard days earlier. One neighbor, John Wenzel, described a heartbreaking scene. The children's mother had tried to run into the burning trailer, screaming their names, until neighbors pulled her away. She went inside the house trying to get her kids, he told reporters, but it was too hot. They finally got her out of there. She was rushed to the hospital with severe burns and smoke inhalation. By midday, detectives identified the owner of the trailer, 27-year-old John Henry WALSTON Jr., a man who lived alone in the same mobile home park and had known the family for several years. According to early reports, the children had been staying overnight at his home, something they had done before. WALSTON had presented himself as a trusted family friend, but something had gone terribly wrong. Investigators quickly zeroed in on inconsistencies in WALSTON's story. He told deputies he had been injured trying to rescue the children, but his burns didn't align with his account. When forensic teams began testing his clothing and the interior of the trailer, they found chemical traces consistent with accelerants. That same afternoon, WALSTON was taken to a hospital under police guard for evaluation. He was later arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of sexual assault of a child under 12, 1 count of arson, and 1 count of animal cruelty. Sheriff Chip Simmons held a press conference that evening. His tone was heavy, his words deliberate. "This is one of the most heartbreaking and senseless acts of violence we've seen in this county. I don't know what else I can say except, please hug your children." In the days that followed, Escambia County residents left stuffed animals, flowers, and candles near the charred remains of the trailer. The community, still reeling, struggled to process the horror. Teachers from the local elementary school organized a vigil for Vaden and Raiden, describing them as cheerful, inseparable best friends. The children's father, Tyler Smith, spoke to local news crews, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "How can you expect any human being to do this, let alone an adult with 2 kids?" he said. The comment captured what many felt: this wasn't just a tragedy, it was an unfathomable act of betrayal. Meanwhile, investigators continued piecing together the timeline. The fire had been set shortly after midnight, and preliminary autopsy reports suggested both children died before the blaze began. Evidence indicated the assault and killings occurred in the hours before the fire was reported. Detectives also found phone data placing WALSTON at the scene continuously that night, contradicting his initial statement that he had left to get food. Prosecutors from the state attorney's office in Pensacola began building a capital case, consulting with fire investigation experts and forensic psychologists. Given the brutality, they confirmed they were considering pursuing the death penalty. As forensic evidence returned from the lab, it confirmed what detectives suspected. The accelerant used matched a fuel source kept in WALSTON's shed. DNA evidence linked him directly to one of the child victims. The case against him grew airtight. WALSTON was booked into the Escambia County jail without bond. His first court appearance was scheduled for November 26, 2025. At that hearing, prosecutors are expected to formally present the charges and may seek a grand jury indictment for capital murder and aggravated sexual assault of a minor. In the hospital, the children's mother continued to recover from second and third-degree burns. She has not spoken publicly, but, through relatives, released a brief statement thanking the community for their prayers and vowing to seek justice for her children. The investigation remains open as of this week, though officials say there are no other suspects. Forensic teams are finalizing fire origin analysis, autopsy toxicology results, and electronic evidence collection. If the state attorney's office moves forward with a death penalty filing, it will likely be one of Escambia County's most closely watched prosecutions in years. The case has already spurred local debate about how repeat violent offenders are monitored and how easily people gain the trust of vulnerable families. Though WALSTON's prior record hasn't been fully disclosed, investigators hinted he had prior run-ins with law enforcement, though nothing approaching the horror of this crime. As the court date approaches, Escambia residents continue to visit the charred lot where the trailer once stood, a silent reminder of the violence that ended 2 young lives. In the blackened soil, some neighbors have planted white crosses for Vaden and Raiden. Others left toys beside their names. The scene is quiet now, but the echoes of that November morning linger. For detectives, prosecutors, and a grieving mother, the search for justice has only begun.